Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for finding the time to join me today for our monthly webinar. My name is Annie Pettit and I'm the Chief Research Officer at Peanut Labs, a company that specializes in providing self-serve and full-serve research sample. You can always find our full listing of webinars on the Peanut Labs website under the Resources menu. We will be recording this webinar, so if you have to leave early, don't worry, we've got you covered. So today I would like to welcome a special guest. Susan Sweet is the Chief Researcher and Insight Generator at Sweet Insight Group. She specializes in online and in-person ethnographic methods and mixing innovative techniques along with more traditional research approaches. She's also a director at the Qualitative Research Consultants Association. You can follow Susan on Twitter with her very easy to remember username. It's just her name, Susan Sweet. So in today's webinar, Susan will talk about how quallies are pushing the boundaries in an era of potential data overload. She's going to give us a peek inside the growing toolbox that Qual researchers use. If you have questions along the way, do feel free to type them into the question box at the side of your screen, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can at the end of the webinar. So now I would like to give the computer over to Susan.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'll get started by just telling you a little bit about qualitative research, what it is. I'm sure some of you here know a ton about qualitative and some of you may not. So we'll talk a little bit about that just to get started. So what do you picture when you think of qualitative market research? What picture do you get in your mind? Do you think of focus groups, in-depth interviews, research that is neither statistically reliable nor representative of the larger population? The stuff we see on TV and cringe at, things that we see on YouTube comedy bits or on the 24-hour TV news channels. Yes, it is true. There are all kinds of qualitative research. Some of it is truly abysmal and slightly embarrassing. See the photo. And some of it is rigorous and inspiring. And it's also true that Qual tends to be abstract and amorphous with unstructured questioning, and it can't be validated in the same way that quant can, but this is actually where the richness lies. Qual is used to gain an understanding of underlying motivations for behaviors. It provides insights into a problem or helps to develop ideas and hypotheses to investigate further. Many of you who are in the market research field will agree with me that quant and Qual are great partners. You may also know that our industry is changing, and the better job we do at embracing the possibilities, the richer and more meaningful insights we can provide to our clients, and frankly, the more fun we'll have on the journey. The good news for everyone in the world of market research, and this includes anyone who touches qualitative in any way, is that the methodologies as well as the analysis tools and options for deliverables are more interesting and expansive than ever, and I'd like to tell you about some of them. Like other researchers, quallies all sought to learn the right way to do things when we started out in the business. Great moderating techniques and solid analytical skills are and always will be an essential foundation for qualitative researchers. But experimentation, including working with suppliers at all steps in the process, can really lead to new insights. So sometimes people ask me, why does this rule breaking and innovation actually matter when you already have a lot of tools you can use? The truth is it helps us get closer to the source, and we want to be as close to the source as possible because that allows us to see behaviors that are as real as they can be. By working with other innovators in the market research community, we can learn from each other, sharing our successes and failures, which we learn from both, and this benefits our clients. You may know this already, but quallies by nature tend to be rule breakers. We are typically the more creative types who like to invent new ways to get information that is as close to the source as possible. Many of us started out in qual and quant positions where we were doing kind of a mix of both. And we realized along the way that we were not really good at staying inside the lines. Sometimes our supervisors had to tell us this. The great news is that we have an ever-growing toolbox. Most qualies I know today have expanded their self-perception from traditional researchers who use a finite set of tools to strategists who use a huge range of approaches within the big, broad category of qualitative market research. As I always learn at industry conferences, and especially those put on by the Qualitative Research Consultants Association, or QRCA, my colleagues are continually blazing new trails in how we collect and even analyze data. I mean, honestly, they are so far beyond what I could do on my own. So I love to learn about these things. I just returned from the QRCA's Worldwide Qualitative Conference in Vienna, where I not only had wonderful food and beverages with friends, but I also saw and heard about these advances and got inspired to try new things. Qualitative practitioners certainly have more than focus groups and individual depth interviews at our disposal. In fact, we have myriad ways to conduct qualitative research among groups and individuals. And the great thing for anyone who is slightly frightened of those is that these newfangled tools happily coexist with traditional approaches. Our toolbox is continually growing. So let's talk about this evolution. How did this start? Well, it all really started with door-to-door interviews and focus groups that were conducted in what might feel like a sterile research facility. Robert Merton and Paul Lazarsfeld were kind of the founders of focus groups, certainly within the United States, and of course Ernest Dichter. We have all kinds of history of the social psychology behind focus groups, but what we're doing with them is quite different now. We still have them, but it's no longer 10 people around a conference table for 2 hours with observers behind a mirror, and it's not always quite a hothouse environment. We've moved into more situational research, so in situ conversations that happen in places like bars, cars, schools, all kinds of places. They're often recorded, clients are there, and it's not true ethnography, but it's observational research in the situation. Now we've moved into online conversations, digital conversations that were really first chat-based, and then moved into asynchronous interviews and group discussions that might be conducted over a few days, like a bulletin board, or a huge long-term community. And all of these are still used today. So even though chat sessions were where we started, those are still used today. But there are many different platforms and providers, and each of them offer something slightly different. And it's honestly, it's a chore to keep up with them, but it's sort of, I see that as one of my jobs. We've then moved into mobile observations, and this can include things like short-term life blogging, capturing behaviors and attitudes either with or without the interaction of a researcher, sharing photos with headlines and captions, uploading video clips and tagging them, geolocation, all that kind of stuff. And all these things can be captured and shared from a mobile device. So again, we're getting closer to the source. And then we've also, alongside this are also co-creation sessions where things like, it's not just a participant who is recruited and separate from us, but now it's clients, experts, brand users, category laggers, whatever, any mix of people who can all work together on a challenge where decisions are made almost instantly. Instead of waiting for a report, we're actually generating insights and working on them together. And the most fun for me is really this mix of disciplines. It's including all of the above along this chain, along with behavioral economics, things like sensory sculpting, photojournalism, improv comedy, which several of my friends are incorporating with qualitative research, semiotic analysis, social listening, and more. And so all these things working together are really where the richness lies for us and the excitement lies for qualitative researchers. We love it. It's pretty exciting. Qual used to be fairly rigid because it was based in psychological research. The methods really drove the results. And doing focus groups, as clients used to say, made clients feel that qualitative research had validity. They knew what to expect when sitting in the back room of a focus group facility, eating their M&Ms and taking notes day after day. But now we've found that staying loose and being expansive is really what's key to keeping research real, to finding those deeper truths and meaningful insights. And luckily, our clients are on board with this change, at least most of mine are, or are rapidly moving in that direction. In the field of qualitative research, we're moving towards documenting human truths in a way that brands, companies, and organizations can really use. One big concept that was new and exciting 20 years ago when I started in this industry, but is now mainstream, is the idea of triangulation. Triangulation can have many meanings, but here's a good one from Nova University. Many qualitative consultants refer to the use of mixed methods, more than one qualitative approach to look at the issue holistically, as what triangulation means today. This is because we typically include 3 or more methods or views of the data from different angles. And of course, we can also mix in quant research approaches too, but for the sake of this presentation, I'll keep it to all qual. Some people call this multimodal or layered approaches. It's all the same thing. It just means using multiple lenses to look at the issue. How do we choose what mix of methods to use, including the mix of recruiting methods, the different online and mobile tools, the flow of discussion and use of projective techniques, and all the analysis options as well? How do we do that when it's different for every single project? We simply can't offer boilerplate solutions when every business challenge and need for understanding is so different from the last. We get to be creative and push ourselves and our clients and to take ownership of the outcomes. It really does keep things interesting, to say the least, and it's almost always fun. I mean, who doesn't love a good creative challenge? So I think here's a point for me to tell you, in the sea of all this change and the fact that we have exponential growth in the options available to us, what really matters to qualitative researchers when so many things are options? So if qual is unique, custom, and filled with variables, where should we focus our attention? And based on my own experience and in talking with colleagues, I'd argue that there are 4 main areas where quallies put their emphasis today. The first is finding high-quality humans, like those pictured here. These are all from my projects in the past year. The second would be deep connection. The third is meaningful storytelling. And the fourth is ongoing collaboration. And I'm going to talk about each of these 4, but I wanted to give you an overview of where we're headed here. We care about high-quality participants. Great sample, excellent recruiting, solid follow-through is needed to get the right people in place. Our clients expect qualitative consultants to deliver this, and they often don't know all the steps it takes to make it happen. And frankly, they don't need to. That's our job. But sadly, a single mess-up can ruin a project when small sample sizes are the norm. So it's important that we work with other researchers and suppliers who care as deeply about the quality of our participants as we do. This is where sampling is the starting point for great recruiting. And after we have the sample or database to pull from, we must use a well-crafted screener that relies on thoughtful questions and minimizes the use of quant algorithms that can feel like you've taken on a needle in a haystack search. We also rely on skilled recruiters and supervisors to ensure that we have real people who are ready and truly interested in participating. We want them to know what they're getting into, and we want them to have fun with it. And the next piece is about deep connection. Quallies are seeking depth. We work to truly understand the business challenge from our clients' perspectives so that we can design not only the methods, but also the analysis interpretation that will get to all the issues that they have. Yes, we are looking for opinions, but it goes deeper than that. We care about really connecting with our participants so that we understand how they think, feel, and why they act the way they do. We choose the methods that allow us to do just that, to get the surface level answer first and then push further. Every good quality I know is intensely curious. We want to understand both the big and the little whys so that we can explain them to others in a way that makes sense. It's the reason we often triangulate and mix methods, techniques, and approaches within a particular project. And it might look a little bit messy if it's done right. I thought I'd show you a typical discussion guide, but frankly, those look pretty boring. They never show the magic that happens during a great conversation, whether it's a group discussion or interaction with one individual at a time. The free-flowing aspects of qualitative discussions provides the beautiful, multifaceted outcome from something that can look inelegant, frankly. Sometimes it looks like a mess. We don't really care, we, as the researchers, don't really care how that looks. And we know that sometimes it takes patience to get the depth that we're seeking. We care about engaging and really engaging with people and finding interesting ways to collect data and then to make sense of it. That's really what we're about. Meaningful storytelling is another key area of this. It's an area where qualitative hasn't changed in terms of the need for great analysis and interpretation. But what we're focused on more in currently is really about meaningful storytelling. We now have a crazy amount of data to sift through. Imagine those things that I was discussing before, mixing methods where you have output from online discussions, photos, videos, other artifacts, and then all the questions that you knew needed to be answered through the fieldwork. Many quallies are now using partnerships with those who offer text analytics, social media analysis, video production, even packaging visuals at the end like cartoons and posters and books, along with really just fantastic presentations. Or they work in larger quant organizations who offer these things internally. And those of us who have worked in large companies know that that is actually a lovely benefit of working there. But now we can use these smaller relationships or relationships with others to tell those meaningful stories. And so why are we doing this? When it used to be just fine to turn over a report with findings and a few implications and then walk away to the next project. Well, it's because we really care about collecting and retelling these meaningful stories so that we'll have insightful deliverables for our clients that they want to use and reuse over and over. Since Qual is dealing in smaller sample sizes, I think next we'll talk about the power of n equals 1. This might, for some of you quant researchers, you might be rolling your eyes now, but hear me out. Since qualitative is dealing in smaller sample sizes, you really do have to talk to a lot of people to find that n equals 1, to tell that compelling story, but honestly that one story or a singular moment that a particular participant shares, which you find out later is not all that unique through collecting data, can make all the difference leading to a real insight. And some of these photos here are ones collected from participants where I was doing online or mobile studies combined with in-person. So it's probably irrelevant. I tried not to show anyone that hadn't given me permission to. In fact, I didn't show anyone who hasn't given me permission to use this publicly. But that's another thing, as of course we could talk about that another day, is privacy and how important that is here. But really storytelling, especially when research participants have given you, they've shared so much of themselves and they're so willing to be candid and tell you about their lives, we want to honor that by sharing these stories. And video clips can do that really well. I'm not showing any to you today. But they can actually show our clients the big surprises and ahas they would never have believed if they had just seen it on a chart. And those weird people that we interview and really get to know deeply can give all kinds of color and nuance to statistically derived segments. So we work in tandem to help tell the stories that sometimes quant data can't really tell or can't tell it as well. Do you love these quotes? I love these quotes. They're all from real studies in the last year. Okay, finally, collaborating. This is a big thing for me, especially because as I'm an independent qualitative consultant, increased collaboration is really a huge thing for us. Gone are the days of silos and competitors looking askance at one another. We are just not about that anymore. Now it's all about working together, using individual strengths and expertise to not only win business, but to make clients' jobs easier and to have fun in the process. I consider my suppliers at every stage of the project to be true partners, and I look for collaborators who are just as focused on strategic and useful outcomes as I am. It helps a lot if we enjoy working together and can push each other and push the envelope a bit. An example of that might be QRCA. I sound like I'm doing some sort of infomercial for QRCA, but it just happens to be one of the best organizations that independent quallies can join. The 900 plus independent qual research consultants all over the world who are part of QRCA are reason for me to join. I might be one consultant working on my own, and I live in beautiful Boulder, Colorado, but I have a network that spans the globe and colleagues who specialize in anything that is not my area of expertise. So I've worked on at least 10 projects in the past 2 years. I just did a quick count with just my QRCA colleagues, some of whom have hired me and others that I brought in for a particular challenge. And oh my gosh, it's so much more fun this way. And our clients always win. So quallies have to stay, this is the last thing I want to leave you with, is that quallies have to stay loose, think creatively, and be collaborative to make all the good stuff happen. With the proliferation of tools and the constant invention of new ones, from small tweaks to online and mobile platforms to the new uses for virtual reality, neuroscience, and always-on connectivity, it's all new all the time, and yet the need for quality people, deep connection, and meaningful storytelling remains. So let's all look for ways to collaborate with each other, because everyone wins when we do. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Susan. There are quite a few questions that have come through, so how about I just start reading them off for you?
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll start with what is just a comment. Someone says they love the inverted pyramid chart. It's a great illustration. Woohoo!
Yay! they like my drawing. Apparently they have written discussion guides like I have where you think, yes, dear client, I will try very hard to follow this, but there is no way it's going to happen.
All right. Here we have a question. I tend to caution strongly against n=1 reporting because my clients sometimes listen to it and think they know the entire story from that. How do you balance the rich color you get from one respondent with the need to ground that in a broader context that might look quite different from n=1?
That is such a great comment and question. I love it. So first, let me clarify that my n=1 reporting I never do that. But what I do use, I gave some examples there. That's from many of those are from ethnographic studies where, as you can imagine, we've got like 12 or fewer respondents. So in some cases, the individual story can take on a life of its own and be really helpful in whatever kind of study that we're doing. But I totally agree that clients will occasionally think that if they've attended one focus group out of a series of 6 to 9 of them, along with the homework assignments that were done that they never see, or the follow-up mobile diary that I'm going to have them participate in, they might take that one focus group who might have had this strange outlier who was interesting and yet not representative of the entire study, that can be quite dangerous. So I agree with you. There is always a balance to be had there. What I meant to say, and I hope came through, is that those stories can be powerful. So individual stories have power, but yes, we do need to caution that for the robust studies that we design, that clients actually hear all of it.
All right. I have a question from Liz who wants to know, what is sensory sculpting?
Ooh, yeah. You should have come to Vienna, Liz. Yeah. So that is it's kind of like a projective technique where this was done by social scientists in Austria, as an example. The one person who presented in Vienna. It was new for me too. But it's using a lot of tactile elements and creating them to represent feeling about a particular topic, brand, whatever. And if these are done in a larger group of people, let's say you did it in a focus group. Actually, we had another behavioral economics presentation who kind of touched on this. It's the idea of using multisensory really using our senses to help create a visual representation of deeply seated feelings. So I don't do it personally, but that's what I'm saying. This is like pushing the boundary stuff, and there are a couple of, I'd be happy to put you in touch with the 2 or 3 people who talked about it in Vienna.
All right, so it sounds like QRCA is where you would go if somebody wanted that.
That's right, yeah. You could probably go to the website and someone would there at the organization would be able to help you with that.
All right. I have a question from someone who wants to know if there are any techniques for working with or diaries with patients.
Uh-oh.
What's wrong? You there?
I'm here. I don't know where that went. Sorry about that.
That's right. We've got a question from someone who wants to know if you have any tips for doing online diaries with patients.
Yeah, yes. First of all, we could have an entire webinar on that. In fact, there are the PMRG, the Pharmaceutical Market Research Group, which I'm not a member of. They deal with those issues a lot because there's all the HIPAA requirements and all the governmental protections we have for patients. But I have done them before, and they are incredibly helpful. I would say that one of the best things to do is to consider the platform that you're using to make sure that it is an individual response as opposed to a group, a platform with group discussion, because people feel really safe once they've gotten to know you as the moderator, sharing details with you, and we keep confidentiality absolutely assured. So they use an avatar as opposed to a picture of themselves when we introduce one another. They're oftentimes given a code name or number. We oftentimes let them pick their screen name. And so we have those conversations, but there's a layer of protection for them to feel safe about it. And it's the same when I've done things like sensitive topics research, very similar when I did one on intestinal gas. Strangely, lots of people were so happy. It was very cathartic for them to talk about these things, and it's the same in healthcare. But we could talk. I'm happy to answer questions about that. It's such a big topic, and there are so many great tools and suppliers who could help you with that project.
All right. On a related note, someone is asking about tips for working with sensitive topics like payments, income, financial, where people don't really want to answer the question directly.
Okay. So are you asking, was that question more about online and mobile techniques to do that, or just in general?
One-on-one discussions.
Yes. Okay. So I did a similar project. It's been now a couple of years, but it was all across Canada, actually, Annie. I got to eat my way across Canada. And and one thing that is really interesting is discussing the thing about qualitative research, and it may be me having worked with just great quallies in my time. I've had great supervisors. I've had great colleagues who I've never seen someone unwilling to share. Once they've been recruited, they often really want to share and learn from the experience. So I would say the trick really comes in recruiting well. That might be my best tip for you on sensitive topics, because once they get ready for the discussion, and I use a lot of projective techniques there, so they're not talking necessarily about themselves, but maybe they're using color chips to describe it, or we're using an image board and we're relating to images and what they pull out for you. So there's still a lot of things based in psychology. But if you've recruited someone well, meaning they fit the criteria, they're interested in the topic, and they really want to participate, then really the sky's the limit. And I haven't found that there's any trouble getting people to open up. I just did a study on a sexual device, which will make everyone's ears perk up. And that was fascinating, I got to tell you. But I was shocked at the amount people were willing to share. Possibly TMI occasionally, but it was a wonderful example of how if you've recruited people well and you tell them up front, this is what we're going to do, This is who the moderator is and what she's going to be talking about. Are you comfortable with this? They say yes, they're all in. So it's all about the great recruit.
It sounds like that's the next webinar.
No, I'm not going to talk about that one.
Well, that is a fun note to end on. We have actually reached the end of our time for today. So I do want to let people know if you have more questions, I know there were still a few that I didn't get to, do email them or link or tweet with Susan or myself, and we'd be more than happy to make sure you get your questions answered. Susan, thank you so much for making the time to share your expertise with us.
Oh my gosh, Annie, it was my pleasure, and I am really thrilled that so many people were able to join, and thanks again for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. So everyone, have a great day, and I hope you have as much fun with your qualitative data as Susan clearly does. Bye, everyone.